So today we're going to dive into a pretty dark chapter in India's history. But we're not going to do it by reading from a textbook. Instead, we'll look at the scars it left behind on a city and on its people. We're going to follow this trail of blood from the 1946 Calcutta killing, and we'll do it by looking at the objects, the testimonies, and the traces that it left for us to find.
Before we even get into the story, I want to start with just one number. 4,000. That's the estimate of how many people were killed in a wave of sectarian violence that just ripped Calcutta apart. And this happened in only a few days back in August of 1946. This was a tragedy that really set the stage for one of the largest and most violent migrations in all of human history.
Okay, so to really understand the personal scars this event left, you first have to get a sense of just the sheer chaos of it all. So let's start there, with how an entire city was basically set on fire.
Right, so this event, it came to be known as the Great Calcutta Killing. It all started on August 16th, 1946. And this is what historians really point to as the point of no return. That moment when all the simmering tensions just exploded into open warfare on the streets, making the partition of India pretty much inevitable. So how did the violence spread so unbelievably fast? Well, it wasn't random. It was organized. It kicked off at a single sweet shop, but then it just cascaded. Rooftops suddenly became arsenals, places to store weapons and attack people down below. Down at the river Ghats, boats were set on fire. Even factories, like the Kishoram cotton mill, turned into sites of massacres. Even ancient symbols got twisted in this. The sound of a conch shell, which is normally for prayer, became this terrifying signal that an attack was about to happen. And you have to understand, the horror in Calcutta, it didn't just stay in Calcutta. It was like the first domino to fall. Just 2 months later, you have these retaliatory massacres erupting in Noakhali. From there, the violence spreads like a virus, first across Bengal, then all the way to Punjab. And all of this built up to the explosion that was the partition of India just 1 year later. But, history isn't just about big timelines and staggering numbers. It's really about what people saw, what they felt, what they managed to survive. So now, let's try to see this whole thing through their eyes, through the eyes of the witnesses. Just listen to this testimony from M.D. Khalil, who was a Muslim resident. Think about the things he lists: hot water, chili powder, acid balls. I mean, those aren't military-grade weapons, right? That's the sound of desperation, the improvised tools of a family just trying to make it through the night, defending their own home from their own roof. Now listen to this account. It's from Shankar Chowdhury, a Hindu resident. And what's so haunting is the words are almost identical. The roof, the all-night watch, the acid bulbs, the hot water. And that's the thing you have to get. The terror was completely universal. On both sides of the divide, ordinary families were trapped in the exact same nightmare. And this violence, it wasn't hidden away in some dark alley. It was happening right out in the open. This account actually comes from the celebrated actor Soumitra Chatterjee. He's recalling what he saw as a boy. He was just 10 years old, watching from his balcony as a man was hunted down and killed right in front of his house. Just imagine having that image burned into your mind as a child. And think about this, how symbols of just everyday life were twisted into these horrific images. The theater artist Ruder Prasad Sengupta remembers seeing a train pass by, something totally normal, except this train had dead bodies hanging from every door. Something that's meant to connect people had become a literal hearse. And this trauma, it didn't just end with Kolkata. This is from Naroda Debnath, a survivor of that retaliatory genocide in Noakhali. Her words, they paint this absolutely apocalyptic picture. A river turned red, fire everywhere you look. And think about that. Decades later, she says she still can't sleep because those images, they just keep coming back. When you're forced to flee for your life, you can't pack up your whole house. The few things you manage to grab, they become these incredibly powerful symbols of everything you've lost. And that's what this next part is all about, these objects and the memories they hold. So take this story, for example. For one Hindu family that had to flee from what is now Bangladesh, this single heirloom was all they managed to bring with them. It became the only surviving piece of their entire ancestral heritage. a symbol for a whole world left behind. And then you look at this. On the other side of the divide, this was the last thing the Ahmed family, a Muslim family, carried with them as they were displaced. It's the same story, just with different people, different objects. The loss, the memory. It's identical.
Okay, so this piece, it really captures two sides of the very same coin. On the left, you've got this personal hand-drawn map. It shows how the city's neighborhoods were literally redrawn by displacement. And then on the right, you have the cold, hard, bureaucratic proof of that same displacement. An official refugee certificate issued to a little boy who was just 1 year old. But here's the thing. The tragedy didn't just end when the riot stopped. Take the story of Mrs. Minu Roy. Her husband was killed, so she fled with her 2 baby daughters. And she was sent to a government camp with this just chilling name, a permanent liability camp. Basically for women with no male provider. The state was supposed to take care of them. But 75 years later, her daughters, now elderly women themselves, were found still living in that same derelict, abandoned camp. It's this story of failure that spans generations. A family just completely forgot. So the violence literally redrew the map of the city and created legions of refugees. But maybe the deepest scar, the most lasting legacy, was the invisible walls it built inside people's minds. So after 1946, the entire social fabric of Calcutta just unravels. The fear was so deep that people started to self-segregate, leaving mixed neighborhoods for the perceived safety of their own religious communities. I mean, can you imagine? Neighbors who'd lived side by side for generations were suddenly afraid of each other, retreating into separate enclaves. And you can literally see this transformation written on the city's buildings. Take this library, for example. In 1946, it was known as the Islamia Library. Today, it's called the Srinath Library. Now, that's not just a new sign on a building. It's this quiet but really powerful symbol of a massive demographic shift, of one history kind of being erased and another one written over it, right there on the street. And for the few who stayed behind, well, the loneliness could be just profound. Listen to Abdul Majid. He's an 80-year-old caretaker of a cemetery. He talks about how his entire community just left. But his own parents are buried in that soil. That question he asks, where would I go leaving them? I mean, it just says everything, doesn't it? It's the voice of someone tied to a place that's become almost unrecognizable. So, you see, the real impact of all this, it isn't just something you read about in a history book. It's etched into the city's very landscape, and more importantly, into people's minds. And the source material we've been looking at, it uses this really powerful phrase to capture this deep internal wound. So yeah, history gets written on the streets. It's in the names of libraries. It's in those precious objects families carry with them. But the real question, the one that lingers, is this. How does a city ever heal a partition of the mind? That's the real challenge. It's not just about rebuilding buildings, but about mending the trust, the shared identity, and the way people see each other. And that's a wound that takes a whole lot longer to heal.